Okay.
Hello, everyone. It's the Drinker here, and I'm going to kick off 2021 with my first happy hour of the year. And what better way to start the year than by talking about Cobra Kai, because it's a damn fine show. And I'm going to be joined tonight in this epic task by Tom from Midnight's Edge and Danquish, who's been on a few streams with me already. And yeah, it's going to be a pleasure to talk about this show tonight. So how are you gentlemen getting on?
Doing the best I can, and I'm ready to talk some Cobra Kai.
All right. Well, cheers to you both, and happy New Year to you both. I raise my glass.
Happy New Year to you, sir. I'll raise a glass of Woodford Reserve to you.
All right then.
That's better. And happy New Year to everyone in the stream, everyone in chat. Hopefully you're going to enjoy yourselves here, and yeah, hopefully we've got a few Cobra Kai fans out there. So yeah, I mean, I pretty much started watching this show like right from the off when it kicked off on like YouTube Red, and then it became like YouTube Premium or whatever. And it was, it was just a show that piqued my interest right off the bat. I didn't expect really anything of it. It was just, the idea that this like web series that was going to be a sequel to like a fairly obscure karate movie from the 1980s could possibly be any good. It just seemed ridiculous, but I thought I'll watch it out of morbid curiosity, and damn, it absolutely blew me away. Like, I did not expect it to be as funny and as poignant and as well written and as well balanced as it was. Like, I was really surprised by it, and every season's just kind of built on that. Like, I mean, how did you guys learn about it initially?
Dan, you go first.
I'm just trying to recall. I think we had seen the trailers advertised for it, and being the 80s kid that I am, Johnny just immediately, struck a chord with me. I'm like, wow, I love the little jokes that he's saying and the things, and like it looked like it was poking fun at PC culture, and I'm like, okay, I'll give this a watch. And I was just genuinely curious of like, okay, exactly like what you said, of how are they going to make a TV series based upon this series of movies that I remember. And yeah, we were very entertained with season 1, and then season 2 came, and we were like, nah, it's getting a little too teen angsty, but I like where they're going. And then when they left it on that the cliffhanger with the friend request from Allie, both my wife and I were like, oh no. So we've just been waiting and just we just finally binge watched season 3 this weekend.
Yeah. No, that's cool, man. What about you, Tom? How did you discover it initially?
Well, of course, I've been a pretty big fan of the series since I was a kid. So I've kept up with it over the years, even saw the remake out of Obligation, I guess. Then, I heard rumblings about this possible series. I think I remember hearing about it in some article or interview with somebody at some point, and, just waited for it just like everybody else. And then I saw the trailer and I was blown away because, of course, I kind of had an idea where a lot of it come from. I've seen some of the How I Met Your Mother stuff and the video, the viral video of Daniel's the real bully and all that kind of stuff. So I was aware of the idea, the concept. So I kind of figured I knew what we were going to get, but I was blown away at how good it was.
Yeah.
I mean, I never expected in a million years for it to be as good as it was.
Yeah. It grabs you pretty much straight away, doesn't it? Like, you obviously get that little flashback of the fight at the end of the first movie, and then you see Johnny in the present day, and it does a great job of setting him up as a sympathetic character right away, because he's obviously down on his luck and he drinks too much. Hey, done well.
Is there such thing?
Yeah, well, there's no such thing as too much drink. But yeah, he's working as a shitty handyman kind of job, and obviously he's just kind of burned out in life. And straight away you feel kind of bad for the guy. He's down on his luck. Whereas Daniel, on the other hand, he's not exactly an antagonist, but
they have reversed roles in a lot of ways, though.
He's not the scrappy underdog anymore, and he's kind of a bit full of himself, and he's like this successful car salesman. He's got like the wife and the kids and the beautiful home, and all the rest of it. He's rich, and so he's everything that Johnny isn't. And I love how you've got this new dynamic now where Johnny's portrayed as the kind of protagonist of it, and he
is the underdog now. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And he connects with Miguel, who's like one of his neighbors on like his apartment block, and he sees Miguel getting bullied because Miguel's just a skinny little kid at school who's getting harassed by like the local shitheads. And Johnny like kicks their ass one night and protects Miguel. And it gives him the idea to, I guess, found Cobra Kai to become his sensei again. And I mean, I have to say, like, Johnny is without doubt my favorite character in this series. Like, there's other awesome ones, like Hawk is really cool and all the rest of it. But Johnny, like, his lines are great. The delivery by William Zabka is absolutely pitch perfect. He's able to swing between, like, this 80s dude who's just been transported into the present day and doesn't get anything. Like so much.
I equate him with Archie Bunker. He's a modern Archie Bunker.
Yeah, totally. But he's just so fun. Like every time he's on screen, you're waiting for something to happen. But he gets real moments of poignancy as well. And
for sure,
I guess that's what that's one of the things that really impresses me about this show. Like it's funny as hell, but it never goes into complete farce. Like it always has one foot in the door of being serious and having like really dramatic moments. And I think that's such a challenge as a writer to balance comedy and drama and pathos and all that stuff. But they managed to walk that line just perfectly.
Well, especially considering the original series wasn't comedy. Like they've managed to switch tones and do it so well. And managed to, like you just said, keep one foot still in the original series while exploring this other side, because Johnny is obviously a much different. And I do equate him to Archie Bunker in that loving way. Like we love Archie Bunker, even though we know he's an ignorant fool. Like that's one of the things that we just are endearing about him, because it's like, oh, he just doesn't know any better. Like so we feel bad for the character. We identify with him in that way. We may not all necessarily be like Johnny, but we do like the character and we do root for him. And that's what a lot of other writers don't understand. And basically, I don't even know if you realized it, Critical Drinker, but these guys have done what, Star Wars and all these other franchises should have done, but more specifically Star Wars, because you just explained to me what The Force Awakens was comparatively to The Karate Kid. And basically they did the exact same, like Miguel is Daniel. He's the same exact character. He's being raised by a single mother. He's being bullied. He's the little guy, and he gets saved by this guy who knows karate, who's like this to him is the greatest guy in the world, and he's like a super magic guy who has the answers to everything he needs, which is basically what Miyagi was to Daniel. But this is a different kind of Miyagi, and that's where the twist comes in. So instead of just doing a bigger Death Star, we get a different Death Star. You know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to equate the two, but there is that equation to be made in that sense that this is how you revamp a series and do it right. Because every one of these new characters is a mirror of one of the older characters. And we're getting to see what these possible characters could have taken in different paths. Like getting to this season, Tori is obviously a mirror for Kreese. Robbie has been a mirror for both Daniel and Johnny in a lot of ways. Miguel has been a mirror for Daniel and Johnny at some points too. And then the same thing with Daniel's daughter. She started off more like Johnny in this series, and she's slowly becoming more like Daniel. So
well, a lot of the characters they almost switch roles,
exactly,
through their different character arcs, and it's really interesting to watch. And I love this. I love this idea that when you had Mr. Miyagi in the original movie, he was a wise mentor character through and through. You got the feeling you could go to Mr. Miyagi with any problem and he'd have some kind of solution for you, right? But when you get it to the present day with guys like Daniel and Johnny, they are now filling that role of the mentor character, but they don't have it together in the same way that Mr. Miyagi did.
No.
They are very much flawed guys in their own ways, still struggling to find their own path in life in a lot of ways. But also,
we learned that Miyagi was too in a way. Sorry, not to interrupt you, Drinker, but yeah.
You kind of get more of that with the sequels, but I think with Mr. Miyagi, there was always that much more strong sense that he was an absolute rock and he could take what life threw at him. Whereas with these guys, they've got their hang-ups, they've got their flaws, they've got their issues, and they're still working through that. They're almost like well, they're real people, I guess. None of us have got our lives figured out, but they also are having to fill that role of being a mentor and trying to do their best in their own way. And, you know, they help people, but they also make mistakes along the way. And I think that's a really interesting thing to explore. And it's what the show does really effectively. It never mocks them. It never encourages you to see them as clowns or anything like that. They are, like all of us, flawed humans doing their best with the experiences they've got.
Well,
and I think that makes really good writing to be able to do that.
Well, I even think the first movie does show that Miyagi doesn't have all, you know, he isn't exactly there yet, because we even see, like, when we first meet him, he comes off as that grumpy kind of like get off my lawn kind of guy. And then he goes from that to being, you know, the magical sensei. But then we learn in that scene where Daniel comes in and he's drunk, the history of this guy, and where he's kind of broken, and where we kind of see where Daniel is kind of filling that role for him as well, as you know, vice versa for Daniel is getting that father figure out of him. And then they just expand on that role even more and more as we get to the sequels and we learn more about Miyagi. You're right. But like, even here, like, I love that scene when we get into the bit with Miyagi where Daniel's like, I'm the same age pretty much that Mr. Miyagi was when I met him. And he seemed to have all the answers and I have no clue what I'm doing. And then when Daniel gets that letter read to him and he realizes that Daniel is what gave Miyagi his direction in life, because you can kind of see where Miyagi probably was. You know, he was, you know, he'd probably been sitting there doing the same thing for 20 years. Since he came back, you know, he was probably depressed and probably been an alcoholic, didn't really talk to a lot of people, I imagine. He was probably really introverted. So yeah, you can see where somebody like Daniel would come into his life and really would, you know, like the bonsai tree is a real analogy for their relationship, because the more Daniel would grow, the more, you know, Miyagi would come from being inside out and, you know, being more of that fatherly figure and all those things that we see out of him, that I'm not so sure Miyagi was always like that. And I hope this show starts to explore those things in the past, that, you know, we may learn that Miyagi did have a bit of a darker history and stuff.
Well, I mean, obviously you got to see some of that in season 3, where Daniel goes to Okinawa, and you know, you get to see some of the letters and some of the history of Mr. Miyagi that wasn't necessarily told to Daniel. I mean, like, you know, it's nothing dark. It's not like he was keeping, like, you know, family secrets from her or anything. It's just you get little insights into the character of the man without tarnishing his legacy. Take note, Lucasfilm. You know,
no, exactly.
That's crazy.
What I mean by darker is I just mean that, you know, he must have went down a really depressive track after he lost his wife and did all this stuff and fought for, you know, the U.S. in the war, which the writer spoke to that. And he said the specific reason why he had Miyagi do that was because when he came to America, he wanted Miyagi to signify that whole era of and generation of people that came here, and they just wanted to show that they were just proud to be Americans, and they wanted to show that they were, you know, loyal. And that's what Miyagi did. And for his sacrifice, what did he get? He got his wife thrown in an internment camp, and in turn she died while giving childbirth because she wasn't given proper care. Right. So he was screwed over by the country that he came to, thinking that was the land of opportunity and dreams and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like that part's in the original movies. It's just not really amplified. I think they can really use that and jump off that in a lot of ways.
Well, that's something that we just really noticed, because actually my wife has never seen the first 2 movies. So we were watching season 3, and I would pause every now and then just to try and give a little bit of context of like who this guy was and how he fits into the story, and when Kamiko comes in and, you know, all that. And from my memory, I just really appreciate all of those little story beats, because the original movies, you kind of almost take it for granted, like, oh, this is what we're doing. This is Mr. Miyagi. This is Daniel. This is a simple story. And then I was just, how the writers have taken what is essentially a shallow plot, if you want to call it that, and just really expanded on it and created all of this lore and backstory for all of these characters to, hey, didn't know that. That's cool. And it's just really unfolded into a compelling story, including Kreese.
Yes, absolutely. You know, this it's kind of like a character study in a lot of ways. You know, they can use these movies as a jumping off point. And like you say, you know, there's certain characters where you didn't really know much about them, like Kreese. Okay, you knew he was in Vietnam and he's a really hard-ass sensei that has got a really brutal style of leadership. That's pretty much all you get. He's kind of a cardboard villain in the movies. But then, man, you get such depth to his character in this, because they've obviously got so much more time to play with, and they can give him that backstory.
Sure.
And so, again, it's a hallmark of the really good balanced writing in this show, that you can feel sympathy towards Kreese, despite the fact that he's an antagonist in this, because you get those flashbacks to him in his younger days when, he started out as a decent man with his sweetheart back home, went off to war in Vietnam, and got kind of screwed over by his commanding officer and was forced to be brutal in order to survive. And it taught him some really hard lessons about life that he's obviously kept with him for the rest of his life. And that's kind of what's molded into the man he is. But you can understand where he came from, and that's what you should get with any character, even an antagonist. That nobody should just be evil for the sake of it. They should obviously have a reason why they feel the way they do, or why they look at the world the way they do. And that's what you get with this, which is excellent work.
Again, back in the day when the movies came out, we didn't really think about Kreese all that much. It's like, oh, he's the bad guy, we're supposed to not like him, and he is responsible for Johnny being the way that he is. So I think that's as far as our sympathy and or empathy went. But for them to then take that and create the backstory for him, now you almost feel bad looking back in retrospective, like, well, maybe I shouldn't have been so hard on the guy. I'm talking about Kreese, like
to a point, but I feel like they also show that there was something broken in him before that.
Sure.
Like the way he puts that beat down on that one guy with the girl there, like, yeah, it's justified, but like he goes a bit too far. And then we're seeing that like this instructor that he gets when he goes over to Vietnam is almost like an enabler for him. And it almost just brings out that more so to where, he becomes the Kreese we know today in that moment when he realizes, yeah, I'm never going to make the same mistake again. You're right, boss. And he, sacrifices his own, commanding officer when he doesn't have to, just simply out of pure just venom, to be punny. And I think that's the moment Kreese is born. It's really, because he was pushed to a point, and you do feel sympathy to a point, but there's plenty of times where Kreese could have made the right choice. And I think that's what that was showing more so. And I really feel like they did a great job of making him not necessarily sympathetic, but like you said, you understand where he's coming from. And I really think we're going to see a lot of that going forward with Tori and Hawk. Like Hawk now has kind of made that transition back, but before this, in this season, we kind of did see some of that to where, this kid could get on the very same path that not only Johnny did, but worse, he could be like Kreese when he like broke Dimitri's arm. It's like, this is the kind of guy Kreese is, not Johnny.
I hate to say it, right? I actually really enjoyed that bit where he broke Dimitri's arm, because Dimitri's such a fucking douche in this.
Yeah, but they did a good job at kind of turning that character around this season, I think, in a way. I could be wrong, but yeah.
I think, they've, they brought Hawk back, and I like the fact that he didn't get his ass kicked and surrendered. Like, he kind of recognized himself, okay, this has gone too far. This isn't what I signed up for. And it's not really who I want to be, because they laid the groundwork throughout season 3. He has little moments where he's like, "Shit, this is too much," or "I don't like what we're becoming," and that's when you get the turn from him. I think with Dimitri, he's more of a one-dimensional sort of character. Like, he's just this dorky guy who's, I guess, he's written to be that way, but he just comes across as really whiny, and he's an absolute pussy. And for some reason, he gets the absolute hottest girl in the school, and it's never really explained why. It just felt like a little bit contrived with him. And so,
yeah, kind of.
They did do the little back and forth there when when the girl signs his cast and says, "Hey, I got a wedgie, and I know what it's like to be an outcast." So there you're supposed to see the connection there.
It was a little contrived, but I believe with Dank, I agree with Dankwish. Like they did do a good job kind of building up to it a little bit in this season, but it was more so with that. I was just kind of like, they didn't do a very good job of building up the other character, the girl character, as much to my memory in the last season, but I could be wrong because I have not watched the last season since it was on YouTube. So it's been like almost 2 years since I've seen it. So
yeah, same with me. Like I watched it when it was out, season 2, and then like I haven't really gone back to
because
that
I
one
only
since.
barely remember her character in the second season. Yeah,
For sure.
So is that the bad girl character?
yeah, she
Yeah.
was in the. Sorry, Danquish, go ahead. My bad.
I was just going to say, I think she was just the stereotypical rich girl. I think Sam was part of that group.
Yeah,
and they ostracized her, made her a pariah kind of thing. So that started that, and then the whole revenge arc, as it were, was Sam and the other kids getting revenge on the mean girls at the end of season 1, and that's it. That's as far as it went.
Yeah, this is the problem I had with season 2, is that it focused a lot on those two, and
Right.
I didn't particularly care for them. Like, Sam is, she's meant to be sympathetic, but she's kind of like a rich girl, and like I didn't really buy into her being like the kind of outcast of school. And the other girl, and I can't remember her name for the life of me, like the bad girl, who becomes her rival. I think they kind of painted her as just like a generically tough female character without really giving her much to work with. And, she has moments where she can like beat guys twice her size and all the other stuff. And so I was getting a bit worried with season 2 that they were focusing a bit too much on this, and it was starting to get a little bit, a little bit too down the wrong path. Whereas I really wanted to see more of Daniel and Johnny. But I feel like they really brought it back for season 3. And yes, you still get that rivalry between the two, but it's mostly Sam kind of traumatized after the big hallway fight at the school, which was awesome, by the way. I fucking loved watching that. Like, it was well choreographed. It was good fun. There was all the different characters got their moments to have a good kick-ass scene. And it was pretty cool. But that was her arc for this season 3, was just eventually learning to put aside her fear. And you do get a little bit more depth to the other character, the other girl. You
Tori?
find out Tori. You find out like her mom's ill. She's been to she's been to juvie. I think she's in trouble with the law, and she's like trying just to get by. And so, okay, you can sort of understand why she's angry and just a troublemaker kind of thing.
Well, not to put too fine a point on it, but I think they definitely did something to her chest in season 3.
Yeah, damn. Like,
I think there was some augmentation there. So we always were a couple of drinks in whenever we would watch an episode, and so my wife and I are just chuckling of like, holy crap, look at this gratuitous, cleavage shot here. And it's like, hey, listen, if all goes to pot there, good luck with your OnlyFans account or something.
Yeah, no, they definitely arrive a couple of minutes before the rest of her.
I noticed too, and I like looked it up just to make sure. I'm like, okay, she's of age, but I also found out in that look she was like a Disney Channel actress, so this might be her choice to kind of distance herself from that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Possible.
I mean, the only problem I have with them is neither of them can fucking fight, like the two actresses.
I'm sorry, I could not get past that this season. It's like, okay, I'm all about suspension of disbelief, but like watching them in the dojo going through their moves and their katas, and then watching Sam when she was at home practicing her kata, I was like, oh, this is some of the laziest, weakest choreography or moves I've ever seen. And the fight in the house was, oh boy.
Yeah, it was like, it was really like, you kind of assumed that they would get better over time, because it's like, well, you've had a year to practice and train up for this. Some of the actors in this can fight. Like, I'm pretty sure Robbie, the actor that plays Robbie, can fight pretty well. The actor that plays Hawk can fight.
I actually just read that because of Hawk's, I cannot remember the actor's name, I'm sorry, but because of his involvement in this show, it's actually sparked an interest in him to study martial arts. So he's been doing that on the side. So
that's interesting.
So he is actually getting into it.
Yeah, a lot of the younger cast is actually made up of actors who've been around for a while, I've come to find out. Like Hawk specifically, Sam has been another one. She's been around for a while. Like we just said, the girl who plays Tori's been around for a while. The kid who plays Robbie, I think, has been around for a little while too. So for the most part, most of the main, even Miguel, he's been acting for quite a few years as well. So like a lot of these kids have been kids coming up in the industry. So unfortunately, I don't see like there's an imbalance with some of the acting, and I agree with you guys like between the acting and the choreography as far as that goes. Because the girl who plays Sam, I think her name's Mary Mauser or something like that. She's okay in some stuff, and then other stuff she's kind of so. And yeah, I think I agree with the choreography part or the fighting part. Like she just doesn't have it. Whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, because the fight in the house is like it's a big long tracking shot, and okay, it's always going to look a bit rough because there's a lot that has to go on. But when they have like a fight together, just the two of them, it's like okay, you can cut from scene to scene quite easily, and so you can hide a lot and you can get the best out of them. And it's even then, damn, they're so slow and clumsy looking. Like you'd think they could have put in a bit more effort to that. I don't know. Like maybe it's just maybe it's because the rest of them are quite decent. I don't know. It just stands out.
Picking on one specific actor, I'll go to another one. Like the kid who plays Robbie, I've seen him in interviews, and he's much better when he's more relaxed. I don't know what it is he's doing on the show, but maybe it's just because he's a young actor and he thinks if I look stern and I talk down into my chest all the time, it'll be more.
And if I pucker my lips all the time,
that kind of.
He's got the pout going on for sure.
The beat thing, yeah.
Relax there, Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Exactly. Outside of that, I mean, I like the kid playing Miguel. He's fine. I really like Hawk. Like you guys, I agree. He's probably one of the better of the bunch. The girl playing Tori, I have no issues with. I think she's fine. She hams it up a little bit, but of all the kids, those are the two best ones are probably Miguel and
I'll have to say that in our house, Mary Mauser gets very little love. My wife loves just poking fun at her and just like, holy crap, like look at the mom, the actress that plays the mom. And, Daniel, he's not particularly ugly, but we're supposed to believe that that's their daughter. And it's like, and she can't act to save her life. I'm sorry. It's just terrible.
I'm kind of surprised they didn't go for a bit more, I hate to use the word, but ethnic looking person, because if you've seen Ralph Macchio's Real Kids, because his wife is as white as Lily could be, both of his kids look pretty ethnic. Like he's got heavy Italian genes in him for sure.
Right.
Because his son, who is named Daniel, ironically enough, after the character, looks almost exactly like him. It's not exactly, but I mean, you can tell it's his kid.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I mean, for the sake of convenience, I suppose that's who they get. Like, I love how Daniel's son in this is never in it. Like, Sam is obviously featured heavily, but his son gets like one scene and then just fucks off.
I cannot be more grateful because that kid was insufferable in the previous season.
Well, and I think part of it's they got to hide his age too now.
Okay.
Well, you got to think this show is only really, if you think logistically, we've only gone now. We're just about 2 years into the show, even though we've gone 3 seasons, because the first season ended at the tournament. And now this next season here, we're going to get to the next tournament. So that'd have been a year in that time period. So it was a year before that for the first, you know what I'm saying? So like very little time has actually passed in the show.
Okay. Good call.
There's a few characters that vanish in season 3 that I'm curious about. The Stingray is absent for some reason.
I think they just said they got rid of him.
Right. Was he maybe not a winner?
Which one was he?
He's the guy, like, they're having like a house party. He's like a wannabe Hawk, basically. They're having like a house party at one point, and he's got like 2 bottles taped to his hands so he can drink. And like the police bust the place, and he can't get the door open because his fucking hands are taped up. That's Stingray.
Okay. Wow. It has been a while. I don't remember that.
But I think maybe people just saw him as like trying to be a replacement Hawk, or the fact that he's like a guy who's clearly in his like 20s or early 30s, hanging around with a bunch of teenagers, which is weird.
Well, I think that's just showing that the writers were smart enough to know that they played that joke out as far as they could. And once you got an adult involved in this, like obviously, because they kind of made it sound like not only did he get fired from his job it almost made it sound like a lot of other like he maybe
he's had accusations. But
No, like, yeah. Then there was that other girl. What was her name? Aisha.
Aisha,
okay,
yeah.
Which the makers of the show have said that she probably will come back at some point. But yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, see, I liked her in season 1. You know, and again, because the show was kind of honest about, like, you know, she's a bigger girl, she's getting bullied at school, and she, you know, she requests to be part of Cobra Kai because she sees it as a way to get some, like, self-confidence in her life, and it takes her a while to earn it, and she kind of does earn it. So it's I didn't really have an issue with that character. I thought she was all right. I don't know.
The character was identifiable for sure, and I think that was the main thrust of when they started the show, to create these avatars that perhaps a new generation of kids could identify with. Because when the first movie came out, all we had was Daniel. It's like, okay, well, he's your all-purpose geek, fish out of water, bully type of guy.
Yeah.
Mind and body should move
According to Over
easy,
Easy
with
mode, Aisha
thoughtfulness
had
before
health issues and had to
action.
go, but I didn't hear that, so yeah, I can't confirm or deny.
Huh.
Okay.
I just know that they have addressed it, and she said something on her I can't remember if it was Instagram or something like that. Like she just wasn't in this year, but that was all.
I mean, there was maybe the danger that they were getting overcrowded with characters.
Well, and that's the thing. Yeah,
there's a lot of younger characters in it, and she maybe would have just been lost in the mix otherwise.
Well, and like I think Danquish said earlier, you know, they did a lot in the second season of setting up Tori and Sam, and that's what this season really was kind of building up towards. And now I see why. But then at the time, like I was also like a lot of people like, okay, we're getting way too heavy into the CW type shit. But
Exactly.
Again, but it really reined it in this season, and it kind of gave you a reason why. And there was even things that they did in this last season that a lot of other shows have done that I really hated, like sending one of the main characters to prison or jail is always one of the worst things you can do. Two of the shows that I can remember right offhand that they did that to and it ruined it were My Name is Earl and Weeds. Like, it's like whenever you send a character to jail, that's like a bad move. It really ruins the show. But in this case, it didn't. To me, it actually elevated Robbie's role here and gave him more of a reason to turn on the two mentors.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gave him a reason to gravitate towards Kreese.
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting. It raises a lot of interesting points because, you know, when we start...
well, it's like Johnny 2.0, yeah.
Yeah, essentially. And it shows you how easy it is to get inside someone's head and show them, you know, that whole idea of being ruthless, you know, because Kreese's advice to him when he goes to visit him in prison is like, look, strike first and show no mercy. Yeah. Because Robbie's been getting bullied in jail. There's these guys that keep having a go at him and they're making his life a misery. And he's always restrained himself because he doesn't want to get in more trouble. And then after speaking to Kreese, like he just kind of snaps and he launches himself at them and attacks them, beats the shit out of them, but actually earns himself some respect. Yep. In the process because he stood up for himself,
right?
And it shows him like, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Well, but I'm actually from a writing point of view, I'm add that to the list of things that I'm surprised they actually showed. You know, because the show hasn't shied away from making fun of PC culture and, you know, touchy feely and hug it out and violence is not the answer. But it's like, you know what? Anyone who grew up in the 80s or even earlier, you know, if you got bullied, you learned hopefully pretty quickly that one day you got to stand up for yourself. And sometimes you just got to punch the guy right in the face to earn his respect. And they won't mess with you anymore.
Well, that's what the whole of season 1 essentially gave you. At least in the early stages, you know, that's why... you know, Cobra Kai takes off again because Johnny Lawrence comes in with, you know, and he sees all these kids who are, you know, pussies essentially. Like they get pushed around, they're getting bullied, and they don't know how to stand up for themselves. And he brings in that fuck you 1980s bravado of I'm not going to be pushed around. I'm not going to take your shit anymore. And if you come at me, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. Yeah. And he teaches that to them. And it's not the kind of peaceful Zen style of karate that Mr. Miyagi would use. It's a much more in-your-face, you know, I'm not going to be disrespected kind of way of looking at the world. Right. And initially, it really works. And I think that's what people I would be willing to bet that's what made the show take off, is a taste of that old attitude, that old bravado that people used to have on screen that you're not allowed to really show anymore because it's toxic or whatever. But the show makes a really valid point that a little bit of defiance and a little bit of backbone is kind of what you need to get through life. When
Right.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that's the entire show's message, if there is a message, is that you need a little bit of Cobra Kai, you need a little bit of Miyagi-Do. And even Johnny realizes that in the beginning of the show, and at the end of the first season, he sees Miguel do the things that he did as a kid, and he's like, no, this ain't right. Yeah. And from that point on, he immediately starts to change what Cobra Kai really does stand for, and what he's doing is essentially making it more like Miyagi-Do. But then you have the other side of it that especially we saw in this season is that Daniel's realizing there's a whole other side to Miyagi-Do, you know, that he didn't know about. And that's kind of closer to the Cobra Kai style. But what Johnny's realizing is that he needs to dial it back a little bit, while, you know, Daniel's slowly learning he needs to amp it up a little bit. So somewhere they're going to meet at this, you know, with a yin and yang kind of thing, to be punny, you know, in the middle at some point in the next few seasons here. But like, yeah, I believe that's what they're building to. I think, like, you're right. I think that's the whole message that these creators are saying is, yeah, Miyagi-Do is cool and it works for being spiritual and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes you just can't take no shit.
You know? Exactly. And, you know, that's why you've got Kreese with like the new Cobra Kai, molding it in his image. And he's an example of what happens when you take it too far and you're too merciless and you're too brutal with people.
Exactly.
Ultimately, it kind of becomes self-destructive. You know, the Miyagi-Do way of things is all kind of touchy-feely and a little bit too far in the pacifist direction.
Exactly.
And yeah, like the idea is that you get that kind of balance, that point in between where you can find a happy medium. And that's almost what Johnny now represents, like you say. So it sets up an interesting idea for the next season, where these two guys have come together and they've got to try and find a way of working with each other with very different outlooks on life and karate and all these other things.
Yeah, and I can see a lot of this, and that's what's great about the writing of the show. Again, to put it back to the writing again, because that's what I feel like needs to be pointed out, is this show does great writing, even though it's doing a lot of the same things we've seen in other movies with the Karate Kid before. It's playing with those notions. It's turning them on their head. It's flipping them around and looking at them. It's not deconstructing them.
Yes.
It's looking at them from different angles and going, okay, Johnny was, and I see somebody brought it up earlier, that Robbie was easily manipulated. Well, so was Johnny when he was a kid. That's the thing, is Robbie is just like his father. He wants to be a good kid. He wants to go in the right directions, but he keeps finding himself in bad situations or with the wrong people. And that's just a common trait in Johnny's life prior to this, and now it's becoming a common trait in Robbie's life. And that's just great writing. If you do it well, I wouldn't have cared less if they had Starkiller Base in The Force Awakens, but what you had to do was put the older characters in the roles like they have done here. I'm not necessarily saying make, you know, Luke the Obi-Wan role, but that kind of is what you had to do in a way. Like, you almost had to have him graduate to that point instead of regressing like he did. And then Ryan trying to say, oh, but I made it better in the end. No, you didn't. You made it 10 times fucking worse. You know, it's like, sorry,
don't worry, Tommy.
I
should know better here.
Whoa, wait a second. Are you saying the sequel trilogy wasn't good there? Come
on.
Well,
if you write for inverse, you're supposed to think it is now, because if you like Cobra Kai, you can't not like The Last Jedi, you know.
It's a completely different ball game.
Exactly.
Kind of like you say, you know, you can build on characters and move them forward in their lives and show them, you know, either moving in a positive direction or a negative direction. But you can do that without destroying the character. You know, in Johnny's case, what he became made total sense when you think about the start he had in life. Yeah. You know, like learning all this really kind of destructive behavior, being like this spoiled rich kid who's never really had to stand on his own 2 feet, and then ultimately losing to Daniel. You know, you can see how that would put him into a spiral, and so he's ended up where he is. But he's got that fire of determination within him. It's buried deep now, but he rediscovers it over the course of this show, and you respect him for what he's able to achieve because he can build himself back up again.
But they also they also did a great job with Johnny, with the backstory, showing what his home life actually was like. Like Ed Asner, as his kind of stepdad, didn't really care for him, saw him as a like a waste,
constantly putting him down.
Yeah. So you again, you have sympathy for Johnny, and like, you know what?
And you can see why he gravitated towards what he did when he was a kid. Because if you had Ed Asner on one side, basically calling you a piece of shit all the time, constantly, and when you go to school, you're the king of the prom, you're the best looking guy, you know the karate, you can kick the ass of everybody, you got the most friends. Of course, he's going to gravitate towards that. He would feed on that. Like that would be that's like a drug, man. Like you can see that, and you're right, and that's one of the things that I love when I see it in those stupid SJW critics when they bring up, oh, it's so unbelievable that Johnny's still stuck in the past. It's like, have you met any motherfucker from like, come on, seriously?
Listen, I know guys who are still dining out on shit they did 20 years ago.
And I brought up as a prime example. I'm like, look at Married with Children. That entire show is built on the fact that Ed O'Neill's character is literally stuck in the past.
Dude, okay. The fact that you just brought up Married with Children just made me want to subscribe to you even more. So,
we actually talked about how you should revive Married with Children right now in this form, in Cobra Kai form. You call it Married with Grandchildren, and it's about Peg and Al are just stuck raising fucking the other kids as kids because they can't get their shit together.
Oh man, I would love to see that actually try to come to pass, but good luck with that. And then you got
Al dealing with facing all the SJW shit from all the kids.
Holy shit! Could you imagine? Like that would be so entertaining to watch, but it would not last 5 minutes.
No, they would never let it happen. That's the problem. Yeah,
it's. I really appreciate how this season especially has, it makes fun of all that kind of mindset of like, we can hug it out and it's all touchy-feely and all the rest of it. Like they just, like, you can see how the characters manipulate it to their advantage. Like in the high school, like Hawk's causing trouble with people and the teacher interrupts them and he's like, oh yeah, she was invading my safe space and I found it very triggering.
Yeah, I love that.
We had to pause that scene just to like applaud, like slow clap the writers for coming up with the dialogue and that scene, but also having the guts to actually put that on screen.
Oh yeah, it's so, like, I hope they never lose that because it's brilliant.
It was so good.
It shows you how easily this nonsense can be turned on its head.
And kudos to the actor who played that role as the guidance counselor or the teacher or something. I would really like to know how many takes that took. Were they able to play it straight, or did they just crack up?
Yeah.
And I like when they bring up at the meeting, like, wait a minute, you're gonna be hugging a bunch of kids? No, not me, them.
It's Kreese uses it to his advantage later on.
Yes.
And, when he's at the sort of city council meeting.
Person.
Yeah, council person.
Oh my god! Holy!
Like, he's so fucking slick the way he does it. He's like, I'm a retired Vietnam veteran. Yeah. This woman assaulted me in my dojo. I had to take out a restraining order.
Just no, and it's great because that just shows you how much of a snake that fucking Kreese is he'd even hide behind the fact that he is a veteran and use all the things he can to his advantage, and that's what makes him such a great villain. In the vein of, I'd even get into the point where I've always thought Kreese was a great villain, but with this show now, it's getting him up into the pantheon of like Hans Gruber type villain. Like we're getting there.
Okay.
Yeah, he's cool as fuck. Like every scene that he's in, he's always very like laid back and controlled and everything. And like the scene where Johnny's training his new like dojo in the park because he can't get a fucking place to rent out, and Kreese just rocks up in his sunglasses, and he's just threatening him like, "This is your last chance, Johnny.
Train here from 9 to 3 every Saturday, and don't cost us a thing." I love this song.
But the way he just saunters in, like everything that he does, he's so cool. Martin Kove is just great in the role, and it must be great for the actor to be playing this thing that he did like 35 years ago, like now to come back and give him so much more depth and make him such a interesting character compared to what he was before.
For sure.
Yeah, he's definitely elevated it. Sorry, Danquish, go ahead.
I was just going to say they've definitely given him more dimension, uh, as you pointed out. Like I just appreciate the backstory that they created because it makes it believable. Yeah, he's a military man, so of course he's going to be disciplined. He's not just some, hard case bully type of guy. So even though you kind of want to see him get his comeuppance, you realize it's not going to be that easy. And I don't know, just again, from my personal point of view, I just feel a little bit sorry for him.
I think, again, the show does a good way of balancing the character in that, you don't necessarily, you don't want to see him as too sympathetic so that like you actually feel sorry for him, but you can definitely see where the guy's coming from and how he's become the man he is now. And, it kind of surprised me actually when you get to that final fight at the season 3 finale, and he was willing to kill Johnny and
it's
Daniel.
Funny you brought that up.
Do you think so?
I think so.
He had the knife and he had the broken glass. Like that dude was going to full on fucking kill them.
You want to know the truth? I was going to bring that up, Dankwich. That I think you might actually be right in your sympathies because I think they're going to pull on those sympathy strings next year when I think it's going to come down to a point where somebody's going to have to kill him. And that's going to be the first time we reach that point, and I think it's really going to spawn a lot of things. And again, I could be totally wrong, but this is just me speculating. But one thing I've learned from this show so far is they don't say or set anything up for nothing.
Right.
Because when Chosen said to him, there's other things that Miyagi didn't show you. Sometimes you have to kill. You have no choice.
Right.
And like sometimes the best choice is to be able to stop your adversary from being able to wage war.
Sure.
But obviously there was things he taught him because you can't always do that. And I have a feeling we're going to get to a point where somebody's going to have to, whether it's Daniel or Johnny, or maybe even Chosen if he shows back up, one of them will have to, in defense of somebody else, take out Kreese.
Okay.
And that's going to open up a big door.
Well, isn't it interesting, though, that we're actually seriously contemplating like murder within a show like this? Because this is, I guess, one of the things I wanted to address. Like the way the show is able to go from like light-hearted comedy of like, isn't Johnny funny because he doesn't really get modern technology and little things like that, to poignant moments where Daniel's reminiscing about Mr. Miyagi or Johnny's trying to reconnect with Ali, and then like really dark, kind of serious, dramatic moments where people are fighting and trying to kill each other. Like the show can do all of these different things and flit seamlessly from one to the other without it seeming jarring and unusual or weird or anything like that. And damn, that is a real hallmark of good writing, that they can do that. Sure. Balance all those different elements. I've never seen a show that can move so easily between all these different like emotional tones. That's what really impressed me.
Well, one thing I really appreciate, and forgive me if you guys have already addressed this, but they finally expanded on it here in season 3 when Daniel-san and Miguel are talking in the car, and he fills him in on the backstory, because they alluded to that ever since the beginning of the show, of like, hey, trying to tell the story from Johnny's perspective. Oh, really? Is that what Daniel told you? Hey, this is what really happened. Let me, and then it makes you think, oh, maybe Daniel wasn't such a great guy after all. He was kind of a jerk. He antagonized Johnny and this, and just filling in on that and giving the opportunity to tell their side of the story. It just fills out Johnny's character, and it creates that balance.
Well, and then Allie brings that up. She's like, there's two sides. There's your side, there's his side, and there's three sides, and then there's the truth. Yeah. And I think that's really saying exactly what you were just saying. And the point of what they're getting to in the show is that, these two guys are totally seeing it from their sides, and they're not seeing it from the other person's side. And I think that's what we're really going to see going forward in the season. And just to address, I know a few people are bringing up the pressure points. Yeah, he already got to use the pressure points, but there's going to be a situation where somebody could be in a headlock or something where you can't get to those pressure points. Right. And you're going to have to do something. And not only that, don't forget, the only reason Daniel didn't take him out is because his wife showed up. Johnny gave him that nod. And he was not going to honk him. He was not going to give him a nose honk. Trust me, he was going to kill him.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I was waiting for. But yeah, when Sam runs around the corner, it's like, Dad, no. And it's like, oh, for God's sakes, shut up. Finish him. So,
So, like I said, this show doesn't set stuff up for nothing. And I
Sure.
may be a little hyperbolic about it, but I think that it's going to come to that at some point. You never know. I don't think they brought it up for nothing.
Okay.
No, I agree. There's lots of different elements, and I will say, like, most things that happen in this show are well set up in advance.
Mm-hmm.
It's done like quite often in a subtle way, so you don't always understand the implications until it happens. But again, it's well written, so there is a setup and there's a payoff for pretty much everything that happens, and that's again just good solid writing that you want. And like people in chat are talking about whether Terry Silver and Mike Barnes are going to come back from Karate Kid 3. One of them definitely is, because Kreese is making the phone call. Again, sorry, I'm going off on different tangents here, but like obviously we knew from Karate Kid 3 that Terry Silver served with Kreese back in Vietnam and that he owed him his life.
Yep.
You know, the way that the show plays with you in that, you got the guy in Vietnam with the ponytail, and you obviously assume that's Silver. And then he just gets executed. Right?
I love that.
I love how the show plays with you with things like that. And then you find out later on it's a different guy who Kreese steps in for when they're in a prison camp, you know, to fight the commanding officer.
It was the whiny guy,
yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And it just nobody is quite what you expect them to be, I guess. And I love the idea that there's, you know, this history between them that you just got alluded to in one movie. Now becomes this really fleshed out thing with lots of details about like who they actually were and how it really went down, and it wasn't quite what you would expect. You know, you hear a guy saying, "You saved my life in Vietnam." You think, well, okay, they must have been under attack by the Viet Cong or something, and you know, Kreese did something heroic there. But it's like, no, they were captured, and you know, they were forced to fight their own people to survive. Like,
and there may even be more to that story, because if I remember right, if I'm remembering correctly, it's been a few years since I've watched part 3, but I've seen it enough times. If I remember right, I think Silver says, "You saved my butt" a couple of times back in now.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but yeah, I've seen it enough. I think I'm right.
Do you think he's going to be the guy that comes back, or do you think it'll be Barnes, or both of them?
Well, I've actually had the luxury of having Mike Barnes himself tell me my karate is shit.
Really?
I've actually talked to the guy a couple times. I know he wants to come back, Sean Kanan. He really is more than willing, and the guys are real hush hush on what they do, from what I heard. So they've got it all kind of figured out in their heads, but the only people who probably really know what's going on, and even like guys like as far as I know, like Ralph Macchio and William Zabka aren't always 100% in the know on things, because there was even things that I guess William wasn't too keen on in this season 2, but he trusted the writers, and he said something like, you know, they pulled it out in the 3rd season, you know, because he's like, I didn't like where I was at the end of the 2nd season.
Yeah, you know? It did feel like he was just going back to step 1 again, you know, which was kind of annoying. But like, yeah, I'm glad they pulled him out of that pretty quickly. But
so yeah, I think the door's open for Terry and maybe Mike. I mean, because here's the other thing that people keep forgetting, and they did bring it up subtly in the 1st season, is that Terry Silver owns Cobra Kai. I mean, he owns it lock, stock, and barrel. And then when they made the deal with Mike, the original deal was if he wins, he got 50%. But if he didn't win, I still think he got like 25 or 30%. So Mike Barnes, I believe, is still attached to Cobra Kai as well. And then you add in this thing where, okay, you bring in, you know, those two, and you got them two backing up, you know, Kreese and stuff. That makes him quite the adversary to deal with. And even if they save Mike for a later date, you know, there's still always that possibility. So
yeah, I mean, I have no idea whether either of these actors are still active, whether they're still doing things, but I mean, I think they would.
Thomas Ian Griffith, I think, is a writer now. I don't know if he acts anymore.
Yeah.
But I think he tweeted out. Here's the thing, he tweeted out, somebody did a fan art of him, and they put it in like a like making him look like what Terry Silver would look like now. And he retweeted. Actually, not only did he retweet that, I think he pinned that as his top tweet. Thomas Ian Griffith did. So that's a good sign.
I hope he's still got like the late 80s ponytail going.
They put that in the thing, and he does look good for his age, because honestly, he was younger than Ralph Macchio when they did that movie, which is weird.
I forgot about that.
Which is weird, but yeah, like but since he was so much bigger than Ralph, nobody really noticed. And like he's that much younger than what the guy who plays Kreese is, Martin Cove. But no, I think he's on board, and I know for a fact Sean Kanan's on board. If they ask him, he's there. So
they've got to do it. They've fucking got to. Like, honestly, if I was an extra in any of those movies back in the day, I'd be expecting a phone call. Like, it's almost like they've found a way to bring back basically everyone. And
well,
I
it
love
goes
it.
deeper than that. The guy who played Snake in part 3, the one that was with Mike Barnes, one of the goons, Snake is actually, the character is played by the director's son, and it is actually Terry Silver's son in the story, but they don't say it in the movie. So he even has an opportunity to come back as well. So, yeah.
This is quite the tangled web that we've woven.
Yeah.
The Snake's a bad boy, and if you want to be a bad boy, he's or that whole cheesy line.
I mean, when we're talking there about characters that have come back, obviously you've got in season 3, Daniel goes off to Okinawa because of a business problem. Basically, his car dealership's been cut off because they've got negative publicity, and so he's going there to beg for the deal back. And that's when he meets Kamiko from Karate Kid 2, and he meets Chosen, again the antagonist of that film.
That was great.
That was really good. Yeah,
the way they introduce him. And then the end of one episode, and then you get the start of the next one, and you get the flashback to their fight, and it's just this awesome like little montage. And then they kind of sit down for this really awkward drink together.
You don't know where this is going.
Exactly.
I didn't drink.
Takes him off, and they end up having a sparring session. You think he's going to fucking kill Daniel, and then he just turns out to be this really nice guy who's like jovial, and like he just flips on a dime. And I just love how it plays with your expectations of the character, but it shows that like this is a guy who has moved on in his life, and he's found that kind of redemption. He's got maturity now, and he's recognized the error of his ways, and now he's able to make peace with Daniel. But what a great little bit of redemption for that character, who again was just not too complex in the original movie, but now he's got this whole life for himself.
No, but you know what they did there, and this is the brilliance of the writing again, is that they took a character who Chosen was like Johnny, only to the next step. Not only was he loyal to his sensei, he was loyal to a fault to where he was willing to kill and die for his sensei. And then when his sensei twisted and changed at the end of the first film, or second film, I mean, that really hurt Chosen. And he was, and we see what he lived through now. And through that, we get to see though, because when Sato changed his ways, he became more like Miyagi. Now we see what Johnny could have been had Miyagi been his teacher. Yes. That's kind of what Chosen's showing us. And that's what I love about this show.
Yeah. Well, speaking of playing with you, like, did the 80s kid in both of you feel anything when Elizabeth Shue comes back?
Oh, God.
Like,
I felt lots of strange things when you first see her, because you get this weird, like, when her episode kicks off, it's like this random woman in a house someplace, and you have no idea who the fuck she is. Yeah. And then the camera just comes in on Elizabeth Shue, and if I do say so myself, she's looking pretty damn good for like a girl who must be 50 odd easily. I was like, whoa, I'm having odd feelings about her.
Yeah, that was another one critical drinker that made me like the ponytail got me, because I thought that was Terry, like you did. And the other one that got me was, they keep building up this idea that Allie was this doctor. Yes. So I thought she was going to be the one to come in and help Miguel. And even in that scene where they bring in that doctor,
she's got her back to the camera, doesn't she?
Yeah, she's blonde. And you're like, is that Allie? Is that Allie? You're like sitting there, you're like, oh shit. And then you're right, the way they introduce her in the show is brilliant. And that's what I love about it, is how they're just, and the way they used her character was also brilliant.
Yes. Like someone's saying she's 57. No,
I wouldn't doubt it, because I know she was close to Machio's age. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look that shit up right now.
Yeah,
if that's true, like she is looking pretty fucking good for her age. Like,
she got lucky in the gene department, that's for sure. Because I don't think she doesn't look like she's had any work done. I mean, not to be rude, but yeah. No, like, and I love how they took her character and they did. I mean, I kind of figured, and again, they took my expectations, and instead of subverting them, they went above and beyond. And they did it in a way I didn't think of doing it, and that was they humanized her. Because throughout this whole season, you've seen Johnny, and not just this season, but all the seasons, building her up as this perfect, one of a kind, the one that got away, kind of thing. And when we finally get to see her, she's like, look, my life ain't that great. I fucked up. It's like
Well, there's a great kind of build up between the two of them. And
exactly.
just for the record, actually, I was wrong. She is 57.
Yeah.
Fuck me. Ralph Macchio, as I said, was 59, so he turned 60 this year. William Zabka is 55. Martin Cove is 74. Fuck, I want to look that good when I'm 74. I don't look that good now. But yeah, these people all look great for their age, and that's what I like about this show is like they're not so old that they can't do the stuff they need to do physically for it. So, but yeah, anyway, going back to what you were saying, yeah, they meet together. Like they're going to have lunch in some restaurant somewhere, and it's a fancy place. And I love how Johnny thinks they need to order some bullshit like vegan meal or whatever to blend in. And then straight away she's like, I'll just have a cheeseburger. And he's like, fuck, yeah, I'll have the same. And it breaks right between them. And straight away you realize like they're on the same wavelength as two people. And they break the sort of pretensions straight away. And you realize this is a relationship where the two of them can be honest with each other. And you get more of that as they go on. Like he admits that, my life's been kind of shitty since high school.
Yeah.
Since
Well, yeah, because now is he not seeing her as this totem? He's seeing her as a person.
Yes,
that's the thing.
And she's not. It's not like her life's a failure or anything like that. But she is. She's able to be honest and say, well, yeah, much like.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah, like I don't have the perfect life that you imagine. I'm divorced, and I've made lots of mistakes myself as well. And they've both got the baggage that comes with being older. And I think that's what I love about her whole character. The way they use her in this season is she's not brought in just to be the object of some shitty love triangle again. Johnny and Daniel don't end up fighting over her, and she doesn't have to smack some sense into them and say that she's not into either one of them. It's all resolved more amicably than that. They act like adults. They all end up having dinner together, and they talk about where they've been as people, and they recognize ultimately that they both kind of were at fault. They both made mistakes, and I love the final scene between her and Johnny where they hug it out. That they've spent the day together on a date, and there's still that spark of attraction there, but there's also the recognition of we're older now and our lives have moved in different directions, and we can't just, as much as it was fun to pretend that we're teenagers again for the day, we're not. We're older people, and we've got our own lives and our own.
It really shows Johnny has grown in this show too, because like I said, it goes from him seeing Allie as this ideal thing that he's missed out on his whole life, and then it humanizes her. But like you said, it grounds him. She gives him what it was he needed to find himself. And then Daniel got the same thing with Yukie. He got the answers he needed from her, and I loved that they both got their night with their lost loves in quotations.
Yeah.
And I it just was so poignant and great. And then of course the Yukio whole situation. I mean, before we jump to that, with Allie, they did such a great job of, like I said, I loved how she's like, go get him, go get her. We didn't have this stupid love triangle because I was afraid that's where it was going to. Drinker, I'm like, oh, please don't. And I should have had more faith in the writers, but again, it was perfect. They did such a great job of using her in a way that was perfect, and I don't think she'll ever be back, and she doesn't need to be back. And her whole thing with Daniel and Daniel's wife was great. I love what they've done with Daniel's wife in this season. They really have given her a lot to chew on. I love the part where she's going off and she's like, I know it sounds crazy when everybody else says it. And then when she's in the fucking meeting and she's like, that guy's a piece of shit.
Yep.
Sounded like a mad woman.
She definitely gets more to do this season, because I think the previous two seasons she was kind of just there. She was just this kind of supportive person who wanted Daniel to do what made him happy and all the rest of it. And there wasn't really much to her, but now she's having to stand up for herself a little bit, and she's got this conflict with Kreese, and I think it's it gives her more to chew on, I think, as a character. So it's definitely needed, and it definitely helps.
Yeah, and it finally gave her a chance to be in this world, because again, all the whole time throughout this, her, and to a lesser extent the son, has just kind of been like the the outside world looking in and going, oh, we're still doing this karate thing this week, kind of thing every time they'd pop up. Yeah. But yeah, so it was finally nice to get to see her do something. I mean, they've given her moments here and there. Like there was that double date episode, I think in the first season it was, right?
Yes.
Second season.
Yeah, little bits, but again, there wasn't a huge amount of conflict or anything for her to work with. She was kind of there.
There, yeah. Well, and that's just it. Yeah, she was there to necessitate the scene because the one I'm talking about is where Johnny's like, yeah, I have to add more classes because I've got so many students. I can't, I got to keep adding classes, blah, blah, blah. He's bragging. And then Daniel comes back and he's like, well, it's not the quantity, it's the quality of karate. And she's like, oh, we're doing this now. Like that's what she's had, just those little bits here and there, but they really did give her something to do this time around.
I love this, basically any scene between Daniel and Johnny. Because there's occasions where they sort of have to work together and cooperate, and you still get the rivalry between them and the way they're so competitive with each other, and they're completely different people in a lot of ways, but there's also that kind of little spark of like not friendship, but they sort of recognize the strengths in each other. They
definitely acknowledged in a way without saying it that they know they could have been friends if things were different.
Yeah, for sure. Like even back to season 1 where they're in a
the beer in the bar, and
and they're in a car together, and I think it's like they're taking it out for a test drive. It's like Daniel's going to give Johnny a replacement car, and they put like 80s music on, and they both start nodding their heads in time to it. Just little bits like that, and they almost verge on friendship occasionally. Like in season 1, they all go out for that dinner together, and they sort of hit it off. When they're able to bury the hatchet a little bit and have a few drinks together, they realize that they've got a lot in common, and they get on quite well. But then there's always something that kind of drives them apart again. And now, obviously, they're forced to unite together for this. So they both play it really well. Like Ralph Macchio and William Zabka, they're great together. They've got great chemistry, and it's a real pleasure to watch when they get those scenes together. But it's never overused.
Yeah, I love the Tango and Cash bit. You guys like we're Tango and Cash? No, Tango and Cash are narcotics cops. This is not a cop thing at all, right?
Yeah, we're of that age where we can totally appreciate all of these jokes, and it's great.
Totally.
Yeah, I know Johnny gets some of the best jokes. Of course, speaking of like my favorite line still is like, I'm on the spectrum. I don't know what that is, but get off it.
Yeah. Send it to the internet.
Send it to the
one of those hash browns on the end of it.
Hash browns, thank you. There it is. Like we were cracking up about that.
My other one was like, and put like a cool song underneath it, like Thunderstruck by AC/DC. I don't think we can afford the rights to that. Already got the cassette tape in the car.
Yeah.
And in order to get Miguel inspired, he takes him to a Dee Schneider concert. You're just like,
oh yeah, that was great.
Yeah, you go, Johnny.
I just love when he's writing this list of like things he can do to make Miguel's legs work again, and it's like electrocuting him and like kicking him and stuff, just like really ridiculous stuff that the best Johnny can come up with.
Yeah, I mean Miguel's recovery did seem to kind of happen fast, but
he's young. We'll let it go.
But no, I did like the concert deal. Like I like the idea of it was more of a mind over matter thing. I mean, I get it. It's kind of soap opera-y. But it worked. I mean, a little too fast, but I like the idea. It was when he took his mind off it, when he wasn't being so like, feeling sorry for himself and all that shit. When he was more concentrated on other things, then his body decided to work. Kind of like the whole, Spider-Man thing. It was, all in his mind. That's why he lost his powers. It wasn't that he lost his powers kind of thing in Spider-Man 2. Those kind of things. Like it is a real thing. You would think something like that's bullshit, but I've actually had problems where I've gone to the doctor with my back and stuff, and they're literally like, it's stress. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, no, it's stress. Like, how can it be stress? It's my back. It's like, it's literally from so much stress, your body, and it's like, so you start to realize things like that can actually happen. So,
Okay.
Yeah. No, I really like it. And, like, I think They obviously kept that going as long as they could in terms of Miguel's injury. Like, I know it's one of the central plot points of this season, like his recovery and the fact that it's got repercussions for Robbie, who was responsible for it. I just love the fact that, you know, what you've got here is like this almost this grand saga of like rival dojos and senseis, you know, making alliances and betraying each other, and fathers being manipulated to fight their sons like it's fucking Return of the Jedi or something. It's all this grandiose stuff, but it's set in like just the valley in California. You know, like it's just in this like quiet suburban setting, but it's somehow able to make it work. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's like it kind of semi-acknowledges like this is ridiculous that this is so like high stakes in such a mundane setting, but it just like almost wink wink says go with it, just enjoy it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
No, that was all I was saying there. I love how it sort of embraces the absurdity of it, but just allows you to buy into it at the same time. It's an odd one, but it really works well.
No, because Rob brought this up when we were talking about it, and he's right. Like, that's the big ask of the show, is to kind of suspend disbelief and believe, like, this is Karate World. And that's what he said. He's like, you know, because I said, you know, I get it. Like, this is not Godfather. This isn't Star Wars. What we're getting into here is the Karate Kid, right? And basically what that is we're getting a CW show with karate in it. And then that's when Rob's like, yeah, because this show is better than it has the right to be because it is Karate Kid, but you can take the Karate Kid out of it, and I would still enjoy it. You can just call it Karate High, you know, because he's like, it's just that much fun. You know, it's just, he's like, sometimes you'd rather just see them karate kick each other than kiss in a hallway, you know? It just
for
works.
sure. Yeah.
But it's great because it pretends basically that the police don't exist. Like there's a
Or
me Storm in chat here saying,
yeah.
he's saying, I love how they never ever call the cops. Kids get assaulted, let's not. Kids destroy property, let's not. Kids break into homes and assault owners, nah, let's not.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's great. It's really funny.
Well, they have a presence, but it's just enough. And it's not like overbearing, because like that's the thing, is like once you introduce the idea that the cops will show up once for one of these things, then you gotta adhere to that. So like the best part of it is that they've had them be there, but they've been like, you know, oh, we're dealing with this shit again kind of crap. And then, you know, just they don't really get too involved until like Kreese, you know, and the whole restraining order when she goes to get one herself, you know, and things like that. So like, and in that scene, they do a very good job of showing how incompetent the cops are in this area as well.
Yeah. I'd love to live in a place like that where karate is just like this massive thing and like epic battles just break out at a moment's notice.
Well, and the funny thing is I got to imagine it is pretty popular in the Valley, because when I was doing research for the documentary we just dropped, I read where the original writer had noted that when the first Karate Kid came out, there was maybe 1 or 2 dojos in the Valley, and now there's over 150.
Yeah.
And that's not, and like in most areas that's similar. So like it's just karate just blew up everywhere. But yeah.
Well, I mean, I remember like the early 90s, like I was too young to remember the 80s, but like the early 90s karate was still massive. Like there was always kids in your year at school who knew karate, and they were just like gods.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, and I always got the impression that kind of died out with that era, and like it's not really relevant anymore. But like maybe it still is, or maybe it is in certain places. I don't know. I just kind of feel like back in the 80s, like martial arts and Rambo knives would have just been all the fucking rage. Like everyone was going around with that shit.
Yeah, no shit. No, yeah, you're right. And yeah, like I traced it all back, and it kind of all starts with Bruce Lee. He of course, you know, mixed the martial arts, popularized it in the United States, and with him a few dojos opened up, and then that's where the kid who inspired Karate Kid went to one of those dojos, and then with that Karate Kid movie, it just blew up. Like every kid wanted to learn karate then. And then I think that just it would have died out had it not been for like Ninja Turtles. I think that really egged it on more. Because like
Power Rangers
probably helped after that for a while. So yeah, there's always something that probably can get a kid into martial arts at any time.
Matrix probably did it.
I know the Matrix probably helped then in the late 90s. Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, who knows? Maybe like Cobra Kai is going to be the thing that sparks it for this generation.
I kind of already seen a few people who have said they've, you know, outside of, you know, being stuck in COVID, but they've said that, you know, yeah, Cobra Kai made them pursue martial arts and get back into the Karate Kid movies.
I mean, this is one of the kind of positive messages, I guess, that the show puts across is like, look, this sort of thing is really useful. Like teaching kids self-discipline and self-respect, and being able to take the hard hits that come their way and stand up for themselves. It's all really good stuff. Like it's useful things that are going to help you out in life. And that's something that the show hasn't lost. And I really like that, because I think other shows would almost condemn it and be like, violence is bad.
Yeah, but it helped. You also had guys like Chuck Norris that were positive role models in the 80s that were really pushing karate too. They helped, and stuff like that. So
yeah. For people in chat as well, obviously I'm keeping an eye on it, and I will answer all of the super chats. We just tend to do them in a big block rather than as and when they come up, because otherwise we'll have to keep stopping and starting.
Well, this show is so rich. You can keep, because we haven't even got to Kumiko or Miyagi yet, really.
Yeah.
Because that was the part that really got to me. Because I'm like, okay, going into that bit, I'm like, I know Miyagi's got to give him some kind of message or lesson in some way. How are they going to do this?
Mm-hmm.
And I love how they set it up where he's like, I'm the same age Miyagi was when he taught me, and he seemed to have all the lessons, and I have none. And then when she reads him that letter, I mean, you just get that message from Miyagi that, yeah, this kid helped me not only find my direction, he gave me a family. And then when Sam came along, I became a granddad. And you really get a sense of all the stuff we didn't get to see, on top of just what Daniel really meant to Mr. Miyagi. And that he needed that right then. And then the next half, of course, which we kind of talked about already, which was Chosen giving him the lessons that Miyagi obviously didn't feel like he was ready for yet. But like that whole bit with Miyagi really got to me, and it was like beautiful how they managed to weave it into the story, and it was believable. Because it really plays off the bit in part 2 where Yukie and him are talking, and he's like, why do you never write if you know where I've been all this time? And she's like, out of respect. And stuff like that. So now we know they have a correspondence because she finally wrote him in part 2. And then since he's left, they've obviously been writing each other back and forth all this time. And I thought that was beautiful. Such a sweet little thing, to have those two just,
Again, a great way that you can expand on the characters and move them on a bit, but keep them true to who they were. Without trying to like redefine them into something else. That's just a logical progression of who Mr. Miyagi was, and you get that. And that's again part of the great writing of this show, is that it's always respectful to the characters that came before and the events that came before, and it works with what it has. And I think that's an excellent bit of. It's an excellent example of how you do a sequel like this, or you do something that's so far moved beyond it. You still retain the things that were important about the original movie or the original property.
Yeah, absolutely.
And well, I mean, according to the LA Times, apparently it's too white, this show. I did read that article actually, and that was something else. Like, that's probably written by someone who gets paid like $40 an article, but the fact that it gets published is just disgusting. We never even got a chance to speak about this actually when we did the Midnight's Edge stream. But to take a show like this, which is one of the most good-natured, positive, like fair shows that's got no agenda at all, it just wants to tell a good story, and to apply that kind of thing to it. It's just disgusting, man. It's so disheartening. And I really hope that the people who make this show don't take any notice of stuff like that, because it has a tendency to catch on.
Yeah, what I'm worried about now that this LA Times article took off, and now like leading up through this Inverse article recently from, comparing it to The Last Jedi and all this business. Because when I first showed this article to Andre, he's like, I think this is a paid puff piece. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, if they paid for this, this is the worst thing they could have ever done. I'm like, I'm thinking this is people trying to put pressure on Netflix to pressure them, or shame the makers themselves into diversifying the show that is actually already diversified. But not only that, wokeify it. I really feel like that's what they're doing, because they see this show now that it's on this huge platform and so many people like it that, we got to fix this. That's their mentality. We got to come in and fix this now.
Yeah,
It's got a
you're
white
actually,
lead and all that shit. No, sorry, go.
yeah, and if they do it, they're going to destroy the very thing that made it popular. The fact that it's happy to mock wokeness a little bit, and poke fun at it, and just say like, we're going to concentrate on just telling a good story with interesting characters. Isn't that a crazy idea?
That's radical. I don't know about that.
It really is now. That's the problem. Recently, like, I've been watching this and I've been watching The Expanse, and it's like two shows that are really good, really well written, and they don't really push wokeness or anything like that. And it's like, goddamn, like, wow, we're still capable of making shows like this. Isn't that nice?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, yeah, this idea, exactly like you said, Tom, that like when a show reaches a certain level of popularity, it's like, oh, this could have an impact on culture. We need to make sure that it's correct and it puts out the right messages, our messages.
And some of the critics were harder on it in the third season because, I mean, when it was under the radar on YouTube, for the most part, critics were pretty nice to it. And the first season got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I understand is an aggregator, and I'm not saying that speaks to it, but I'm just pointing this out because I feel like the critics have come around now that because it's on this bigger platform, because more critics and people are seeing it, you're getting a lot more of those woke critics that are saying, wait a minute, there's a problem with this show. Because it just probably sets off all their fucking, radars as far as oh shit, white man lead. Oh shit, they're making fun of woke culture. Oh shit, we can't have this. Mm-hmm. Without seeing how progressive the show really is. And you're right. They're going to come in and they're really going to just trying to destroy it. And that's the thing I'm scared most about right now is that Netflix or the creators will buckle in some way. Because just think of the absurdity, though, because this was originally brought up by, I think this really sparked off with David Nakayama, I think his name is. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, but I believe he's a Marvel writer or artist. And he put out a tweet saying that it's sad that there's a show like Cobra Kai and there's no Asian representation in it. And everybody just went after him. First of all, pointing out that, well, for one, this whole season was heavily evolved around going to Okinawa and all this other shit. And we get all these other classic characters that came back from the second film. Not only that, like people like Mecca and a few others pointed out, isn't it a bit racist to just sit there and say, oh, just because it has karate in it, it should have Asians in it? And not only that, people were pointing out, Asia is a very broad country. Not all of it is in the Orient. And you really need to be more specific there, buddy, because otherwise, people that have nothing. What is your point here? Like, there's all kinds and then of course everybody's like, well, what about Miguel? What about this character, Aisha? This character, that character? All these other characters that are in the show. And it's like, this person is clearly just trying to get some sort of like rise out of everybody and trying to get people to go after the show, so they change it.
Yeah, very much so. And I don't know if people like that just do it for their own clout, so they can say, haha, I forced them to make a change, or whether it's they genuinely think, well, nothing is valid as an artistic property unless it meets like X, Y, and Z diversity quotas, And
they don't see it that way, even though it is progressive, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing about writing like that. When you've got progressive writing and you've got diverse casting, but you don't make a big deal out of it, you almost don't even notice it. It's just there, and that's how you're meant to do it. I called out the same thing with The Expanse. That's got extremely diverse casting, but it absolutely makes sense in the context of the universe, and it's never ever made a big deal out of. Nobody ever references it, and they don't try and put down one group to elevate another group. They're all just people who can, they might be smart, they might be dumb, they might be evil, they might be good. There's no distinction there between groups. Anyone could be anything. And so that's how you do diverse casting. You just make it an integral part of the story, and you don't try and push it, and you don't try and use it as some kind of weapon against your own audience. That's the difference.
To quote Homer Simpson, seems like the classy thing to do would be not to draw attention to
it. Yeah, pretty much. And not only that, I think they're overlooking the fact of how well they are showing, different people in the younger generation. Like, it's not like they're all white. You know what I mean? Like, only two of the main characters are white, and both of them are connected to the family members. Really? So, like, outside of that, Miguel, he's I believe Cuban, if I'm not mistaken, from my recollection on the show. And well, Tori's white, and Dimitri's white, and Hawk are white. But outside of that, every other character is not white.
Yeah.
So there you go.
But it's not enough.
No, it's not enough.
And that's the thing; it'll never be enough.
And you can even sit there and argue the whole point, like we said before. Like Daniel himself is technically not white, even though he's American. He has a very strong Italian heritage.
Yes,
obviously. I mean, so like, give me a break here. What the fuck? How white is white enough for you, or not white enough?
Well, you see that's the rhetorical question. Is the answer is nothing. Nothing will ever be enough, because once you give an inch, then you got to give 10 miles.
Oh yeah, and they'll still browbeat you for not doing enough, And it's just, that kind of thinking is the death of art. It's the death of entertainment, because it just leads to absolute insanity.
Well, that was the last thing I thought about through the entire show. Why? Because, like you guys said, it doesn't fucking call a bunch of attention to it.
Yeah,
and that's their problem.
Yeah.
Well, once you go down that path, then you start to get the Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah.
Where you're watching it, you just wait a second, what? Or not just Star Wars. I don't necessarily mean to beat on that, but Star Trek as well.
Oh yeah.
And Doctor Who, as you guys have very accurately pointed out, where you're looking at this and like, why are you making such a big deal out of it? Who cares? Why is this an issue? Why is this why are you calling attention to your particular diversity? Can we just move on with telling a story? And back in the day, that was just not a thing.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about this before, Danquish, when we reference movies like Aliens, where you've got a group of colonial Marines, you've got women, you've got people of all different ethnicities mixed in, and it's never, ever mentioned, because it doesn't need to be. They're just people doing their jobs. Some of them are better at it than others. And again, there's no distinction there between groups. And so it's just a perfect example of how you do that kind of thing right. You don't need to call it out. You just make it part of the story. I wish someone would tell that to people like the BBC, but they just live by this stuff. It's all they base everything on.
Yeah. And maybe it's the whiskey talking now, but you just said Aliens, Danquish, or not drinker. Sorry, see, that's whiskey.
He's talking to him.
This is good stuff. It's 90 proof, gentlemen.
Yeah.
But it's that's my favorite movie of all time, and to this day I still maintain there has never been a character more badass than Vasquez, with the exception of Ripley.
Well, and speaking of Ripley, in the original film, the way the script was written, they were all interchangeable. They didn't yeah,
because you've got the Ripley could have been a man or a woman, but then
just easily
you take something like Aliens, and Ripley, again, she is badass and resourceful and smart and clearly brave. She's able to overcome her absolute terror of the aliens, but she also has that maternal side to her as well because of Newt,
right?
Which comes to the fore. And again, it's the movie's not afraid to explore that aspect of I guess being a woman, in that you're going to be perhaps more protective towards kids than a man might be, and you're going to be more determined to save them or rescue them.
And they lightly touch on that when they send her into the conduit to get Newt.
Yeah.
So they didn't expand.
And so you can take those aspects of the female, archetype, and use them in your story, but in a way that's not patronizing and it's not pandering. It's just that's an interesting thing that maybe a man, if Ripley had been a man, might have had a slightly different perspective on it. But that's just an interesting thing to explore. Same thing with Sarah Connor. Well, I know, same thing with Sarah Connor from Terminator 2. She's trained herself to become this warrior, who's almost disengaged from the world, but she's also a mother, and she has to wrestle with those feelings of protectiveness towards John, not just as a target that she has to protect from the Terminator, but has her own son, and she has to find a way to reconnect with him. And again, they explore that in a smart way in the script.
Yep.
But now, if you were to rewrite her character now, in fact, you even got to see it in Dark Fate, where she goes on about how you're just seen as a womb to carry the leader of humanity, and isn't that awful And it's like, well, you're shitting on your own legacy there by talking about that. Like, being a mother of John Connor was like your big thing. Now you're acting like it means nothing.
Yeah. And bringing it back to the show, to Karate Kid, it's like I cannot remember the actress's name, but the one who plays Mrs. LaRusso, she's definitely tough.
Randy Heller, I think it is. Yeah.
She's capable.
Or you mean the young wife? No.
Yeah. Yeah, Daniel's wife in the movie or in the TV show. She's a good mother. She cares about her kids, but she also cares, like, she can stand up for herself and like take no shit, but it's not overbearing. Like, she doesn't need to pull out a soapbox and say, hey, listen, for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to tell you why the patriarchy is ruining this dealership.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That if this show had been in the hands of different writers, that absolutely would have been there.
Yeah.
And I think she would have come in and says, you know, Daniel, Johnny, this rivalry is just your toxic masculinity and testosterone running out of control. You need to learn some humility and do better, and all the rest of it. And it would have just been absolutely insufferable garbage. But in this,
actually, she's been pretty supportive of him.
Yeah,
sure. Totally. And she wants to kick Creasy's ass as much as anyone, because it's her kids have been threatened now because of him. And again, being a mother, that's what motivates her to take action, and it makes a lot of sense for her character.
She's willing to, like, if Daniel happens to make a bad decision that's going to sink the dealership or something like that, she doesn't immediately say, you stupid shithead, you've ruined us all. You know, she's willing to go down with him because they're a team, they're a married couple, they're a family. It's like
she respects him.
Yeah, that's crazy. What kind of concept is that?
Yeah.
So,
man, I was just going to say as well, like, we can talk more about this, and I know we were going to talk about the legendary movie that is Fury, but we do have quite a few super chats to get through. So, do you mind if we maybe tackle a few of them?
No, go ahead.
Yes, please do. Yeah.
All right, nice one. So Chuckenhausen here says, "Oh man, I've been waiting for this moment. Can't wait for the upcoming Drinker Recommends version of this, and for Az to give his reviews." Excellent. Yeah, I'm sure Az we'll talk more about it. He was wanting to be here for this one, actually, but he's got another stream going on right now, so he couldn't make it. So it's a shame, but never mind. Miles Mulholland says, Hawk is a legend. Glad they didn't destroy his character, and love the awesome Hawk sound effect when he helps Dimitri in the finale. Best show on Netflix. Yeah, whenever he strips off his shirt and you see the Hawk tattoo, you just get the sound effect. It's awesome. Chuckenhausen also says, most heartfelt moment was Kamiko reading Miyagi's last letter for Daniel. Thank you, writers, for giving respect to father figures. Take note, Ryan.
Yeah, that's one thing that they've really done really well with, is most of them. Even Johnny, who's flawed, big part of his motivation is he's trying to do right with Miguel, what he couldn't do with Robbie, while also trying to be a part of Robbie's life and not force it. And you know, of course, a lot of that comes to a head in the third season, and I'm sure we'll see it play out. But yeah, I really do enjoy that aspect of the show, that they do paint most of the male role models in good light. It's not, and that's probably another reason why and I did kind of bring that up, but I know that's one of the main reasons why these critics, or whatever the SJW ones, are going after the show.
Yeah. Oh, you can't have a nuclear family, or even the basis of one. You've got to destroy that. But you